The eerie and lonely teenage boy during the summer vacation of 1983. 15-year-old Yang Xin was admitted to the high school class of Runin Middle School with excellent grades. As the school was far from home and his loved ones, he still spent all his time alone in silence every day. He looked mature and steady, rarely smiled, and never interacted with other classmates. His appearance always made people feel intimidated and keep their distance. By this time, he had gradually become a lonely teenage boy. When he was in primary school, the school was close to home, so Yang Xinhai would go home for meals after school, although the family's living conditions were poor at that time. Whenever he got home after school, his mother would always have the meals ready for him, no matter how simple the food at home was. His mother would always make sure he could fill his stomach, and there would always be hot soup made by his mother. He could feel the warmth of the family. After entering junior high school, as he didn't have enough money to eat at the school cafeteria and had to travel back and forth a 3-kilometer journey for each meal, he was often late later to avoid being late. He boarded at the home of a distant paternal granduncle who lived not far from the school. While this granduncle's family could provide accommodation, there was no one to cook for him, so he had to carry firewood and rice and cook for himself at the granduncle's place. After entering high school, the school was 4 kilometers away from home. It was even more impossible for him to go home for meals, and the expenses also increased accordingly. The school opened a large cafeteria to make things convenient for the students. Most of the other students bought their meals at the school cafeteria. But Yang Xinhai couldn't do that. His family didn't even have the money to buy notebooks, let alone the money to buy meals, so he had to cook wild vegetables or cook rice by himself. However, the school only had a large cafeteria and didn't prepare a place for students to cook their own meals. Where could he cook? In the first few days after school started, Yang Xinhai could only eat the grain buns he carried from home and drink some boiled water to fill his stomach. Whenever it was mealtime at school, Yang Xinhai saw other students happily buying meals from the cafeteria and eating them with gusto. He himself would hide aside and eat cold buns. There was an indescribable bitterness in his heart, and he felt even more inferior to others when he went back home on Sundays. He complained to his father about why he had made the family so poor. He also said that if the problem of having enough to eat couldn't be solved, he wouldn't go to school anymore. His father said, "Son, none of your siblings can read. You're the smartest and most promising one. You're the only one in our family who's in high school. You must persevere and finish your studies no matter what, as long as you're willing to go to school. I'll sell everything I have to support you. You just say you'll support me in going to school. I can't even get enough to eat now. How can I go to school? I'll immediately find a place for you to get something to eat." Father kept his word on the afternoon of this Sunday. He went to Rurun's village and found a distant relative of theirs in a village about 500 meters away from the school. It was the cousin's family of Yang Xian. The cousin's family not only lived relatively close to the school, but also had a good economic situation. And the whole family was very warm-hearted. Father tried his best to praise his son for how smart he was. He said that as long as this kid was well nurtured, he was bound to achieve great things in the future. The cousin's family not only agreed to let Yang Xinhai borrow the kitchen utensils to cook, but also allowed him to stay overnight at their place. After settling Yang Xinhai down, the sun was almost setting. Father said his goodbyes, and the relative and Yang Xinhai saw him off. Yang Xinhai sent his father to the village entrance and watched his father's back disappear in the afterglow of the setting sun. Then he turned around and went back to the cousin's house that night. The cousin's family made white noodles for dinner to show their welcome. They invited him to have dinner with them. Yang Xinhai ate the fragrant noodles and felt that it was the best meal he had ever had since he grew up unconsciously. A feeling of gratitude welled up in his heart towards the cousin's family, just like this. Yang Xinhai started his life of staying at a relative's place. He couldn't eat with them all the time the next morning. Yang Xinhai began to cook for himself. To avoid a conflict in cooking times with Yang Xinhai, by the time he came back from school, the cousin's family had already finished lunch, washed the pots, and Yang Xinhai quietly heated up the vegetable-stuffed steamed buns he brought from home with the firewood at the cousin's house and made some. He wolfed down the thin noodle soup and then went to school. Just like this, Yang Xinhai started his high school life of cooking for himself, with irregular meals, sometimes having raw food, sometimes cooked, sometimes going hungry, and sometimes having enough to eat one day. After Yang Xinhai came back from school at noon, he saw that his cousin's family was frying dough sticks. But they weren't for him. He still had to use the firewood and salt from his cousin's house to boil the dried noodles he'd brought from home. While his cousin's family was enjoying the dough sticks in the dining room, he hid in the small room where he was staying, slurping the plain white noodles without a hint of oil. Another noon. His cousin's family was having meat buns when Yang Xinhai came back from school. As he was boiling the noodles, he smelled the tempting aroma of the meat buns, and his mouth watered. He stole glances at his cousin's family, looking so happy, and then looked back at his shabby, dirty, white cloth bag. Suddenly, he felt the difference between poverty and wealth, and an invisible sense of inferiority welled up in his heart. His cousin's family also made rice dumplings. Whenever Yang Xinhai came home from school, the rich smell of stir-fried rice puffs and the sticky sweetness of boiled thin sugar would waft out from the operating room at this time. Yang Xinhai was in his adolescence, being playful and having a sweet tooth with the nature of rural boys at this age. How much Yang Xinhai wanted to grab a few rice, flour dumplings, and have a taste, however. The people in his cousin's family were all busy with their own things. No one thought that this boy with a sweet tooth wanted to eat rice, flour dumplings. No one offered him any, let alone gave him one voluntarily, not even a single rice flour dumpling. And at this moment, Yang Xinhai had a strong sense of self-esteem. Since the people in his cousin's family didn't give him any, and he had no money to buy them, he forcefully suppressed his desire to eat rice, flour dumplings, although he felt the sadness of his own desire. He also thought that his cousin's family was really despicable. Yang Xinhai lived in his cousin's house for over a year. He witnessed more and more scenes of the rich-poor gap. The gratitude he originally felt towards his cousin's family gradually faded away. He thought that relatives were just relatives in name, without any real family affection. Gradually, a feeling of resentment emerged in his heart. They make dumplings and fry dough sticks, but they don't let me sit at the same table with them for meals. They even won't let me have a single one of those baskets full of rice flour dumplings. What kind of relatives are they? They really look down on me. Once this kind of emotion took root, it firmly settled in Yang Xinhai's heart. From then on, although Yang Xinhai still acted politely towards his cousin's family on the surface, he secretly hated them to the core. One day, I'll definitely do something earth-shattering to show you that Yang Xinhai is no ordinary person, he thought, but he buried these feelings deep in his heart on the surface. He still put on a cold-hearted look, only occasionally showing a sinister glint in his eyes. From primary school to middle school, Yang Xinhai's academic performance had always been among the top in his class. This made him the hope of his family for a while. But it also often made his classmates jealous, especially because of his poor family background. It was difficult for Yang Xinhai to build self-esteem in front of others. Yang Xinhai thought those classmates were jealous of him because they were afraid he would outshine them in the future. The more this happened, the more he pitted himself against them in his heart. He didn't allow others to look down on him. And gradually, an overly paranoid sense of self-esteem took root in his heart. He made up his mind to change his fate in the near future, but he had no idea how to do it to fulfill his dream. He chose to leave home and venture into the world unexpectedly. This choice completely changed the course of his life. In 1985, Yang Xinhai was a sophomore at Runin No. 2 Middle School. He hadn't paid his tuition for this semester yet, after repeated reminders from his teacher. Yang Xinhai went home on Sunday to ask his father for the tuition after lunch. Dad took out a cloth bundle from under the mat at the head of the bed. He unwrapped the layers of packaging and took out a stack of bills with a strong smell of sweat, then handed them to him. "Son," he said, "I didn't have the heart to spend these $50 during the spring festival. They were meant for buying fertilizers and pesticides come spring, but you're in urgent need of them for tuition. Take them. I'll bring you some food in a few days." Yang Xinhai took the money. He originally wanted to say something more to his dad, but seeing the old man's pitiful look, he swallowed the words back. When the sun was about to set, Yang Xinhai left home without looking back, carrying those 50 yuan. At that time, he probably couldn't have imagined that this would be the last time he went home as a normal person. From then on, he started a non-normal life. That afternoon, Yang Xinhai walked back to school with the 50 yuan hard-earned money his father gave him. He walked very slowly, with heavy steps. It took him nearly 2 hours to cover the over 3-kilometer journey. As he walked, he let his mind wander aimlessly. He thought about being called the son of a landlord when he was a kid, about being bullied by his classmates in primary school, about his elder brother's kids pinching the rape flowers of the production team, about his father's experience of being a scholar, about the 3 shabby thatched cottages at home, and about the twists and turns in his elder brother's process of building a house. From being looked down upon by classmates at school, to being treated as an inferior at relatives' houses, this young man, who was less than 5 feet tall, the more he thought about it, the more he felt his future was bleak. What good would it do for a poor kid like me, even if I graduated from high school? Even if I got into college, could my family afford to support me? And if I couldn't get into college, what would I do when I went back home? When would I ever have a chance to make it? After much thought, he felt that if he wanted to change his current situation as soon as possible, he had to go out and take his chances. He believed that once he stepped out of this small place, the outside world was colorful, full of opportunities and wealth. It wouldn't take long for him to bring back a big fortune. After returning to school, Yang Xinhai neither said goodbye to his teachers nor informed the relatives he was staying with. He secretly invited several classmates and slipped away on a dark and windy night. A week later, Yang Zhongwen, as usual, went to school to deliver grain to his son. He first went to the home of Yang Xinhai's cousin, where he was staying. The cousin told him, "The boy hasn't been back for 3 or 4 days. I don't know if he's staying at school or gone home." Yang Zhongwen then found the school teacher, who told him, "Yang Xinhai has been gone for several days. We don't know where he went." A few other classmates from the same village left with him at the same time. During the summer harvest, the classmates who had left the village at the same time all came back to harvest the wheat. But Yang Xinhai didn't come back. They told Yang Zhongwen that Yang Xinhai had gone to work in a coal mine in Jiaoshu. However, after the wheat harvest, when his fellow workers returned to Jiaoshu, they found that Yang Xinhai was no longer there. It should be said that when Yang Xinhai first had the impulse to go out and make a name for himself, he was full of wonderful visions for the outside world. Please believe that, at this time, like his classmates who went out with him, he had boundless creativity and vitality, as long as there was a suitable environment. Their creativity could make them the masters of their own destinies and the creators of social wealth. rather than destroyers. No one is born a criminal, they all set out with a burning heart. If, after that, their creativity hadn't been suppressed, hadn't been violated, or had been violated only slightly, in other words, if their intelligence and talents had found a suitable soil to thrive, perhaps they would have had, perhaps they all would have had, a good future. But the cruel reality shattered all these what-ifs. A series of subsequent experiences of Yang Xinhai further weakened his already rather fragile nerves and completely distorted his already seriously deformed personality. It made his nature, which was already bordering on cruelty and coldness, gradually bloom with the flowers of evil.